Bitcoin hit all-time highs. Trump won the White House. Crypto finally had a friend in power, and for a moment, it felt like nothing could stop it.
We started 2024 with 170 million users. By now, we are close to 300 million users.
300 million users at the world's biggest crypto exchange, the same exchange that just 2 years ago was hit with a $4.3 billion fine. That's one of the largest corporate penalties in US history. Its founder, CZ, pleaded guilty to money laundering violations. He went to prison, but when he walked out, he was still worth $60 billion. CZ's resignation came with a $4.3 billion settlement with the US government. How did you build trust?
We did make some mistakes.
Meet Richard Teng, the former regulator, now the man rebuilding trust at the center of crypto.
Is CZ still involved in any decision-making?
Today, the future of crypto and what governments around the world are actually doing behind the scenes. This is What's Uptin with Binance CEO, Richard Teng. You're coming up on 2 years as CEO of Binance. When CZ first stepped down, what was that first month like? What was the most challenging part?
Well, firstly, I'm very grateful to CZE and the rest of the co-founders for having faith and confidence in me to continue to lead this very important franchise going forward, right? So I think the first month, again, very fortunate to have a very strong leadership team with me, very committed staff. We will pull through it together. So we spend a lot of time rejigging and rethinking, what's the strategy of the future. And then in my first month, I came out to say that, look, I have 3 key missions. I have 3 key objectives, right? Firstly is always to make sure that we are the best-in-class platform, a best service provider for our users out there, right? And protect them, make sure the trust and confidence continue to be very strong for our users. I think that's one. Secondly, working with global regulators to really support crypto adoption and deployment, coming out with smart regulations. And then thirdly, because crypto is still very early, and so working with global partners, regional, local partners to continue to foster a very vibrant ecosystem for crypto, right? So the more we can do together to make this ecosystem much more dynamic, vibrant, the better off we all are, right? So that's my 3 objectives, and then so far we have been really hitting on all 3.
So it's interesting you say crypto is still early. A lot of people are saying this is the year crypto goes mainstream. Do you think we're at that level?
Well, I see the mainstreaming started last year in 2024, right? So firstly, with the approval of ETF in the United States and then subsequently throughout the world, for many financial institutions, they went from crypto skeptics for many years, right, and pushing back on the crypto agenda, to last year, they started to embrace it, right? So the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and the list goes on to say, hey, we are going to offer our customers crypto products, right? They launch their ETF and then come out with other products to launch to their customers. And this year, the momentums continue to be much stronger compared to last year, right? So towards the end of last year, election of President Trump, which is a pro-crypto president, right? And of the largest economy, most important economy of the world. I think that is a landmark shift of crypto. So we are all beneficiaries of that. I mean, just in terms of user, we started 2024 with 170 million users. By now, we are close to 300 million users. So in a span of just slightly more than a year and a half, we've onboarded 130 million users, right? So you can see the momentum, and many of them, we doubled our institution onboarding last year. This year, again, we saw double there. So we see very strong momentum from institutions. So you're absolutely right. Institution has happened, and then today you have close to 200 listed companies globally with DEX, right? So digital assets, treasury. So we continue to see very strong shift and momentum towards the crypto adoption and supporting the crypto agenda. So that's what excites.
CZ's resignation came with a $4.3 billion settlement with the US government. This was about 2 years ago. How did Binance manage to get over 100 million users, after that controversy? How did you build trust with the public?
Well, maybe I should put things into perspective, right? So when CZ and the rest of the co-founders started this company in 2017, the landscape is totally different. Right? So I mentioned this. At that point in time, crypto adoption globally was less than 1%. The institution was saying that it's a passing fad, it's a scam.
Don't do it.
Different narrative coming out. And the regulators was just, squatting it away, saying that I'm not going to spend time and energy on it. So at that point in time, the rules was very nascent, right? It's very unclear. So in those early days, we did make some mistakes. But as with all responsible financial institutions like we are, I think what's important is that we realize those mistakes, and even when CZ was there, he started to make huge investment into compliance. So in the last few years, we have made huge investments into the area of compliance. Now our compliance team is almost a quarter of our total headcount, right? So we're close to 1,300 compliance staff within Binance. That's how important and how committed we are on that front. And we want to make compliance a competitive advantage for ourselves, right? Because the direction of travel now is very clear. Is one that more and more countries are coming out with clear regulations. We are the most regulated exchange globally by now. So we are regulated in 22 different jurisdictions. So this is a competitive edge for us. The more we can invest in it, for the new entrants, they'll find that the compliance cost is pretty high, but we are able to make those financial commit and investments into that space. So this is something that we're going to harness on, and we have made a lot of investment not only on the compliance front, but also the AI front, making things much better, right? Both from the onboarding of customers, be they retail or corporate customers, to how we do transaction monitoring, to how we do surveillance, etc. So throughout the organization, it's not only on the compliance front, but on the AI front. So we are able to make all those investments to make this the most trusted, the safest platform for our users, and the one that's the most innovative in terms of products and services.
On that note, let's talk about the US market. You have some sort of operations there, not in all states. New York, you can't operate. Do you see a path forward to be operational in the US?
Well, so maybe if I can highlight something. Binance.com is not operating in the US, right? So we have no users, no customers from the US. There is Binance.us, right, which is a different company with a different set of shareholders, for the directors and CEO. So I can't speak for them. But at this point in time, Binance.com is not operating in the US. But what we're doing is, US being the largest economy in the world, has great sphere of influence. Whatever the US do, the rest of the world will take notice. So President Trump is extremely visionary and strategic to say that, hey, US will be the crypto capital of the world, will be the AI capital of the world. Because he knows that these are the two most important technology that's going to drive every economic sector going forward in the world. Right? So if you look at the future world, everything will be built on blockchain and AI. So given US ambition, we as the largest ecosystem in the world and largest crypto exchange, we want to be supportive of that, right? So we are keeping a close watching brief of what's coming out from the US. I mean, big kudos and positive from Genius Act that gave clarity on stablecoins. So you see a lot of new stablecoin issues because of that clarity given, right? So I think the next phase will be the Clarity Act, the market structure bill that's coming through. So with all those clarity, now I think we can take a real look of what's happening over there.
So speaking of President Trump, there's speculation that CZ could get a pardon from President Trump. I'm curious, has Binance or your team had any discussions with the administration on that?
Well, as CZ himself already said, right, nobody will mind a pardon on that front. And quite a number of people have secured pardons. So we have to wait and see. I'm not privy to those conversations, and any of those conversations will be private and confidential, as you appreciate it.
Absolutely. And is CZ still involved in any decision making within Binance despite formally stepping down?
So CZ is a key shareholder of Binance, substantial shareholder. So as with any corporates, right, shareholders have their rights on that front. But on a day-to-day basis, me and my team, we run the company. We report to our board of directors, including 3 independent directors and an independent chairman on that front. So we really push the company forward in terms of strategy, in terms of operating matters, with the senior management team and the board of directors on that front. Of course, there are certain matters that we have to refer to shareholders for approval, similar to any other corporates in the world.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Binance, world's largest exchange, more than 100 million users added, right? You said 300 million users now?
Close to 300 million.
Close, so we're about to hit the 300 million users. We're at token 2049. You look to your left, you look to your right, there's a new exchange. What is the secret sauce that made Binance number one?
Well, really kudos to the founders, right? So they have instilled a very strong mission statement, which is to support the freedom of money globally. I think in today's world, if you talk to people, they say, hey, these are my money, I want to use it in a way that I want to, right? But there's still a lot of friction points globally, right? So we have been supporting that from the very early days. So crypto exists to solve problems. Even today, you have close to 1.4 billion people around the world with no access to banking system, with no access to payment system. So crypto become the only mechanism in the last decade or so that allows them to do transfer locally, domestic transfer, domestic payment, remittance globally to their loved ones at a fraction of the cost of what traditional financial institutions charge. And instantaneous. If you do a money remittance today, you take 2 days to reach the recipient at a very high cost. But if you do it by crypto, it's instantaneous, right? So the beauty of crypto is it solves the world's problem. So other than very strong mission statement, we have very strong values, and the company has very strong DNA. And the DNA, the values, is really putting users at the forefront of every key decision we make, right? So user protection, user assets, making sure we have the best product suite out there, and we continue to innovate for our users. So I think those are key. It's a very hardcore, very committed team of people focusing on execution, very humble and collaborative, right? So all those are very strong DNA of Binance that continue to drive where we are and where we will go head towards.
Absolutely. It kind of reminds me of leapfrogging in China when they, many Chinese skipped the laptop and the computer and just straight to mobile. And now if you look at the most advanced mobile market in the world, it's China, right? So which are the markets that are kind of exciting you the most in terms of capturing the unbanked?
Well, there are so many, right? So, but it's not only markets that are unbanked. There are different, even developed markets that continue to embrace crypto and developing very fast. But if you look at the top 10 global crypto adoption countries globally, 5 of them are in Asia Pacific. So Asia Pacific continues to grow very fast. Latin America continues to grow very quickly, and Africa region, right? So you have different pockets of very fast growth. But it's not only all the developing and emerging markets they are growing very fast, but the developed markets are also embracing. I mean, US is an extremely developed market, and they jumped from number 4 on index 2 years ago to now number 2.
Wow.
Right? And given President Trump's ambition, I'm not surprised if they reach for number 1 very quickly, right? Because they are putting in place all the fundamental building blocks for success, right? And the best and brightest talent pool continue to be there. So the rest of the countries are taking notice to say, hey, US being such a dominant economy, if you want to compete with that, right, we have to really get ahead of the curve in terms of embracing AI, embracing crypto and blockchain, making sure that we continue to draw foreign direct investments into the country, the best talents into the country. And many countries are also starting to do allocation into crypto, right? So you probably have seen our news announcement where Kazakhstan started their own strategic crypto reserve, and they work with Binance Kazakhstan on that front. So many different countries have approached us now, wishing to set up their own strategic reserve. So we are helping countries on that front, not only on the regulatory front, coming out with smart regulations, but helping them set up those. And many institutions come to us, right? By virtue of us being the deepest liquidity pool, they get best execution, best bid-ask spread, lower slippage when they trade through us. And people know that they save substantial amount of money when they trade through Binance, and our product suite is the widest. So we continue to push the agenda on that front.
I'm curious, with your background in compliance, and you said 25% of your staff is in compliance, you spend hundreds of millions a year on compliance programs. How do you balance innovation with compliance? Because traditionally compliance is seen as hindering and stifling growth and innovation, right? So as CEO of Binance, I mean, how do you prioritize the two and make the two work with each other?
I do think that they do come hand in hand. So we don't view compliance just as a hurdle, but it's also an enabler, because when we work with institutions around the world, governments around the world, regulatory agencies, right? So they want the provisions that there's proper safety, there's proper compliance provision to allow for them to work with you as a key stakeholder. So I think that's a key enabler. We work very tirelessly to make sure that we keep the global system safe, right? And so we on the compliance front, we also work very closely with law enforcement agencies around the world to keep this sector safe, right? So we have in the last 2 years, gotten commendations letter from different law enforcement agencies and police force for our efforts in working with them, right? So places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, in Asia Pacific. So all have booked with us to fight illicit crimes, and they are really grateful for our efforts on that front. So we continue to uphold trust and confidence in this sector, which is extremely important, right? Now we are 7.5% adoption, right? It's only by upholding trust and confidence in this sector that you're going to continue to scale up very quickly to reach 20-30% crypto adoption.
So I covered the El Salvador story a couple of years ago where, I think a lot of times when you talk to people, let's say in the US, me being American, and you hear about Bitcoin, the average person sees Bitcoin as a way to make money and get rich, right? They don't, when you tell them like, no, people are using it to pay for their payments, and instead of getting paid in Argentinian peso or El Salvador, well, El Salvador uses the dollar, but Argentina is also a good example, right? Where they have at some points 100% inflation.
Yes.
All of a sudden, so they want to use the dollar, but even the dollar's going down at times, right? So they want to use Bitcoin. How do you kind of educate the different markets and change your branding and communications to cater to the different markets to increase that 7% adoption you're talking about?
Well, so a lot of times, we recently published a series, right? So live content, meaning these are real life stories. And these are things that when I get on the road, people come up to thank me, right? Especially in many of these emerging markets. So for any crypto skeptics that argue that crypto is not a proper transfer of value, right? Look at what's happening throughout the world. People are using crypto, including stablecoins, to transfer value, and that is a superior technology and superior solution compared to what we have currently, right? So you transfer values in an instantaneous basis with very low slippage at a fraction of the cost of what traditional finance do. And for anybody that argues that crypto is not a proper store of wealth, right? Again, going back to your story, I've been to many parts of the world where people come up and thank you. And when I ask them why, they say, my family has benefited so much by holding to crypto, whether it's Bitcoin, BNB, or things like stablecoins, in the last 4 to 5 years, because the country's currency, the fiat currency, is going through the country is going through hyperinflationary situation, and the fiat currency keep depreciating. By holding on to crypto, which on the other hand has been appreciating, they are so much more well off compared to their peers, compared to their relatives, their friends. So they're extremely grateful. So for anybody that try to argue that crypto is not a proper store of wealth, just look at all these life stories that are out there, right? So I think all those things, people experience it, people tell their friends, tell their families, and that's where part of the crypto adoption is coming through in a very big way.
Let's go back 2 years. Would you say, looking back on your 2 years, nearly 2 years, would you say adoption has met your expectation, exceeded, or it's below?
I would say it's slightly matching and above my expectation. For example, I didn't expect the ETF approval to come early last year, to come early in 2020. I expected it to come towards the second half of last year, right? So, but with the ETF approval, that started the acceleration, right? Bit by bit. And then suddenly the momentum becomes very quick, right? So with President Trump's election, now with the passing of Genius Act, you see so many stablecoin issuers trying to come into the marketplace, right? And then you see with the clarity given, you see crypto company listed, firstly in the US and then globally around the world. And then with the digital assets treasury companies coming through in another big fashion, right? So that support has allowed for institutionalization and mainstreaming to take place at a faster pace compared to what I would have expected it to be, right? So we are very privileged to be in this time, but now we are about 7.5% crypto adoption. Given the momentum, the next 10% will come very quickly.
What are your thoughts on prediction markets?
Well, I think that they are great for anybody that's interested in that sector. So we continue to monitor those space very, very, very closely, right? Whether it's prediction market or stock tokenization. We have also announced a partnership with Franklin Templeton, and many institutions are coming to us by virtue of us being the largest Web3 ecosystem, right? So when they need help, support, partnership on those fronts. So we get a lot of people approaching us. on different partnerships.
Amazing. Binance Pay is processing billions in transactions. Do you see it taking over Visa and Mastercard, American Express?
I would say that is going to be a wave of future payment via crypto because it's just much more superior on that front, right? But there's also partnership. We just partner Mastercard in South America, right, on that front. And also, we also have a partnership with Mastercard in Europe, which we announced in August. So is really some of the traditional financial institutions also embracing this space. You probably have seen SWIFT announcing that they're going to adopt blockchain ledger as well. Again, SWIFT, based on the current architecture, is pretty archaic by now, right? So now I think the financial institutions are all realizing that they have to embrace this, otherwise they'll be dinosaurs. Mm. So we are seeing a huge shift on that front. Everybody is jumping on the bandwagon to try to adopt this best-in-class technology.
What kind of ripple effect have you seen with Trump being the most crypto-friendly president we've ever seen? What kind of ripple effect have you seen with governments and regulators around the world?
Huge. Because, as I mentioned, the US is the dominant economy in the world, the largest economy. If you look at capital markets in the US, it's 50% of global capital markets, right? So whatever the US do, the rest of the countries will take notice, right? And determine what's their strategy in terms of being part of that, dovetailing that strategy, or how do you counter that? So that has a big positive around the world. So I think now, if you talk to governments around the world, compared to a year or 2 years ago, most of them have a much more open attitude towards crypto. And many of them have started to formulate their crypto regulatory framework. As I mentioned, many of them have started to consider doing strategic allocation in the crypto. This is something that's unimaginable 2 years ago. Mm. So we are seeing that spillover effect to the rest of the world.
What is one market that you look at and say they're at the forefront?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many, because every country now is trying to say, hey, there's something that's really happening here, right? So if I want to be an important and relevant player in the world on that front, what do I do, right? So if you look at different parts of Asia Pacific, Singapore, Hong Kong, all is trying to be a crypto hub. If you look at different parts of Middle East, right, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Bahrain, again, the same narrative, it happens throughout the different parts of the world. Again, that's happening in Latin America. So we are seeing a lot of different shifts and a lot of different developments around the world.
What's something that keeps you up at night?
Well, it's continue to make sure that we develop the best-in-class platform for users, continue to rethink what is going to happen, continue to push the innovation agenda on that front. Continue to make sure that safety and soundness are the most important in terms of our user assets, right? So listening to what users want, continue to develop products and services that serve their needs, working with global partners to really rethink the future of finance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to talk about President Trump's sons. I think a lot of us did not predict a couple years ago that they would be so heavily involved in the industry. What has the reception been like for the industry?
Well, I think it's been great. If you listen to them, they have been telling why they went to crypto in the first instance, because they were essentially the bank, right? And for them, then the only way, as I mentioned, in many parts of the world, financial institutions make it very expensive to onboard clients, right? You have to maintain a minimum balance for them to bank you, right? And compliance costs, and they impose a lot of compliance burden. And many families around the world can't afford to do that, right? They can't afford to put huge money in the banks, etc. And crypto is permissionless. You can access it 24/7. It doesn't discriminate between groups. So when, the Trump family, I think, for a while was facing a bit of debanking issues, crypto become the natural choice, right, to overcome some of those challenges. And obviously now the times have changed. A lot of big banks and institutions are now adopting crypto. But there was a time where, under President Biden's administration, that it was very anti-crypto and the industry was oppressed at that point in time, right? So the entire landscape has shifted 180 degrees.
Is Binance thinking about 2028? And would Binance openly support a political candidate publicly, in return for a more favorable crypto regulation?
Well, Binance doesn't quite look at political issues on that front. I think our key focus, first and foremost, is always on our users and building the best platform for users in terms of trust, confidence, and the best as a product suite out there. So I think political issues are not really our forte.
Who is your number one target customer right now?
Everyone.
Everyone already, not the 300 million people using.
No. So if you look at it, our ambition is to reach 1 billion customers globally, right? So we are close to 300 million, so we have a fair bit of work to do.
30% there.
Yeah, so but everyone, so from your retail customers to your corporate family office, trust, foundations, institutions, to sovereigns, right? So we have more and more people from all across the category onboarding to Binance, and we are very, very grateful for our user support on that front. It's only with them that we continue to push ahead with our agenda.
And final question here, what excites you the most right now?
Wow, crypto is developing so quickly. We have so many new innovation coming through. We are really very supportive of all this new innovation. So what excites me is to see the next big thing, the next big utility coming through, right? The next big development coming out from this sector. And you can't quite predict, right? So a year ago, you couldn't predict there's 200 listed companies around the world involved in DEX. So again, things are developing at such a rapid pace that it keeps us on our toes and keep everything fresh and exciting all the time.
Richard, really enjoyed your time and really appreciate it. Thanks so much. And hopefully we'll catch up at the next one in Dubai or back here in Singapore.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of What's Uptin, where I bring you inside the minds driving tech, money, and power. Follow along on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow my personal account on Instagram @Uptin. Would love to connect with you.